Did we do well, my darling girls? Did we really do well? We grew you up to be straight and strong, to do your best to know right from wrong. But we grew you in this awful world, a world that's hard and tough for girls. And part of your strength was to take it and make it okay. But it's not okay, my darling girls, in this fucked up, muddled up, mixed up world.
2015 to 2020, Stella was a regular political cartoonist for the UK's only socialist daily newspaper, the Morning Star. Then she was cancelled by them for a feminist cartoon called Endgame, which you just saw there. It shows a crocodile slithering into a little pond of newts who say to the crocodile, "But you can't come in here, this is our safe space." And the crocodile says, "Don't worry your pretty little heads, I'm transitioning into a newt." And the title of the cartoon is Endgame, which obviously when a lot of us think about the transgender movement, it's aiming to, the end game is to obliterate our rights. So who induced the Morning Star to sack Stella? We'll find out about this. Hi Stella, thanks very much for joining us today.
Hello Jan, thanks for having me on.
That's good.
Thanks for putting my cartoon up. I've got it up on the banner behind me as well.
Yes, if you squint, you can see it, yeah. Or Stella will tell you later on about where you can get her book of cartoons, which is a great present for anyone with political leanings or artistic leanings. So Stella, let's start at the beginning. Can you please tell us a little bit about your early life and the sort of family that you grew up in?
Oh, okay. Well, hi to people who are joining who might have heard me speak on other podcasts. So I hope we won't be boring you if you heard it before, but I haven't really talked about my early life before, so I suppose this is a bit new. The reason I did this cartoon for the newspaper in the first place was because the whole issue of transgenderism, and I was only just finding out about it with all the meetings that have been, the fuss that was on the internet. I was finding out about it, and it struck a big chord with me because I felt that way as a teenager, and we're now finding out that many young girls feel that way as teenagers, and it's probably just some sort of normal puberty depression and distress that, you know, people choose to deal with in many different ways. So I did feel like that myself as a child, but I did have a backstory for that because my father basically brought myself and my brother up as if we were both boys, and did things like take us to the same barbershop for short back and sides. And obviously when you're a young child, you run around playing football and with the boys, and you're all kind of the same, aren't you? And you wear boys' clothes and nobody thinks anything of it. Certainly in primary schools in Britain, there's no uniform. So little girls could still go to primary school in jeans, and people have said to me, "But how did you really believe that?" And yes, I did really believe that. I really did believe that I would be able to grow up at the age of 18, join the army, be 6 foot tall, grow a beard, and I did. Now at that young age, what are you doing? You can't say you're fooling yourself. You haven't developed the mental capacity to fool yourself. So I'm presuming it is because of the way my father brought us up both the same.
Did you have little girlfriends, or did you just always hang out with the boys?
My father was quite abusive, and he and that kind of put me off inviting little friends home, although I would go to their houses, but I didn't like to invite them home because of what he was like. And he was difficult. I don't want to, it's difficult to go into.
No, don't go there if you don't want to go there, Stella.
It's not something I never had any kind of counselling or anything like that. But from what I see on the internet about young women who are going through this trans stuff and then detransitioning, I wonder how much of it is due to dysfunctional families and abusive fathers and incompetent parenting. And
well, we would tend to think that probably a huge amount of it is.
Yeah.
But since no one's ever looked at it from that perspective, no one's found it. You know, you have to look for something to find it, don't you?
That's right. And the psychiatrist who resigned from the Tavistock. Marcus Evans has talked a lot about this, hasn't he? That,
Yes.
that the background of the children was never investigated properly. They weren't offered proper psychiatric care. And so it gave me a very, very troubled childhood. When you reach puberty, and all of a sudden you find that you're not a boy after all.
Yes.
And then you start getting all the bullying that you receive at school, which I had a double whammy because I'm disabled from birth as well. So I was on the disabled students list, so I couldn't go swimming. I couldn't do a lot of things that the other kids did. So that made me a target as well. So it didn't give me a very good childhood because I was hiding from bullies all the time and not socializing the way other girls would have done.
So you were isolated by your disability and by the bullying and by the difficulty.
Yeah, I didn't like, I was all right if there was a group of girls and we were just sat around somebody's house listening to pop records. But I didn't like anywhere where you would be socializing with boys. I wouldn't go to a school dance or anything like that. And if I ever, my parents wanted me to go somewhere, I would just pretend to be sick or something, you know what I mean? And by the time I got to the stage of, where I was old enough to be really thinking seriously about it, age 14, 15, I was just skiving out of school all the time and just going off into the countryside on bicycle, and dropping out of school. And well, how far do you want me to go with this, Jan? It led to a lot of a very, very dysfunctional life.
So you dropped out of school. I was wondering when you first started if art was a big thing for you at school, because obviously it's a big thing for you now.
It was probably the only escape I had from it all. Yeah, it was probably the only escape, because if there's a lot of bullies, one of the very few ways you can kind of get them off your back is to be the sort of clown of the class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And be
the person that does all the crazy things. And so yes, and I used to do cartoons for people even at a young age, and it was, in one way, it was a way of keeping them at a bit of a distance. Because you could sort of go and hide in the art room and sort of spend hours on projects and things. So from that point of view, yes, it was a bit of an escape. Yeah. And I read comics all the time, and I was very, very into comics and science fiction and stuff like that.
So you were giving yourself a lot of an education in that world, really.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
All the time on comics.
Absolutely. On my website, which I believe you'll put a link up to later, people can see some of my work going back 40 years. I've documented a lot of it.
Yes. So did things get any happier for you as you grew up then, Stella?
I did what a lot of non-conforming women do, in that I probably went into a profession that was not like normal for women. So I went into the construction industry, and I was in it for 20 years. And, that's in a man's world, if you like. Felt more comfortable there. Again, not socializing very much with other women. I had a very difficult period around when I was 16, between the ages of 16 and 20. I went to what they call the School of Hard Knocks. So I had time in psychiatric hospital. I don't mind saying that. I'll say that openly.
There's no shame.
I think it's the first time I've said it, actually. But I don't mind saying that. This is the sort of thing a lot of women might have gone through.
Yeah.
And again, in some ways, that was an escape. They could see there was nothing wrong with me. I managed to wangle my way in there for 6 months, and it was like a great relief from the stresses and pressure that was in the rest of my life, you see.
Well, I've been the woman in a man's world, and it can be very, very difficult. It's another.
Well, this was before I went out into the world. This was when I was 16. So I think obviously I was attracted to a kind of profession where I would be away from people. I could work on my own and be outside, and do you see what I mean? That attracted me into the construction industry. And And you might say to yourself, well, how could you do that when you're disabled? I expect a lot of people say, well, how can you do that? Because I picked painting and decorating, which is not such a heavy job. You can use your skill instead of your strength, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I got qualified and stayed in that job for 20 years.
Well, it's a good job. You'll always be fine work, won't you? Somewhere like that.
Not at my age now, but
no, maybe you're not looking now. I know I've sometimes employed female painters and decorators because I didn't want a man in the house when you're there with 2 small children. You want somebody nice and peaceful and calm.
So that sounds all wonderful, but the downside of it all was, you know, you're probably suffering from some sort of post-traumatic stress after having a childhood like that, and there's a lot of drinking involved in the construction. There's a heavy drinking culture, and I drank far too much throughout my 20s, 30s, and 40s, and I've only given it up completely in the last 2 years, actually.
Oh, good.
And had a lot of encouragement on Spinster from other people who are also giving it up, so that's very nice.
It's a bit of a thing under lockdown, isn't it? Everyone's drinking too.
Yeah. In fact, people are supposed to be drinking a lot more, but luckily I've managed to. It's helped me. It's actually helped me to be sober and like I said, I've seen other women who are going through the same thing and encouraging one another on Spinster. Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice.
But drinking when you're a young adult, not a good thing. Starts leading you into all kinds of abusive relationships. And
did that happen to you?
Yeah, and you don't have the capacity to make judgments.
Well, especially if you've had an abusive person in your own childhood, you're a parent, then your views of what is normal are, you know, obviously warped in that direction, aren't they?
They are. You sort of repeat your own history. And if there isn't anybody around you, like what I do miss is I didn't have close female friends.
Right.
I did go to political meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I went to things like socialist workers. When I was in London, I went to early meetings of Spare Rib. I mean, some quite famous women might have walked past me and not known, and I don't know, you know, people like Julie Bindel and Linda Bellos who were involved in the early days of Spare Rib. I worked for Lambeth Borough Council, so it's quite conceivable that I met Linda at some point, you know, when they were showing me off, you know.
Yeah.
As an apprentice. And
this is our female apprentice. Yeah, very sought after in those days.
This is what they did. They put you where all the big knobs could see how wonderful it was that they had a female apprentice.
Token woman, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So who knows? Yeah, I might have run So I did go to a couple of early Spare Rib meetings, I remember. And when I went back to Bristol, I went to socialist workers meetings. But I didn't have what you call close friends out of it.
Yeah.
Acquaintances.
Were you living alone, were you, or in shared accommodation?
Yeah, I lived alone pretty much all the way through. Yeah. I mean,
how did you get into political cartooning?
By accident. I just started sending cartoons to the Morning Star in 2015, which was when Jeremy Corbyn got elected leader of the Labour Party, and all the people I knew in politics were all really gung-ho about this and thought, you know, this would be great. And I started doing cartoons about that. And they liked them so much that I then literally fell into becoming their regular political cartoonist. And they've got a reputation for encouraging women artists. Yeah. And also encouraging women's voices. And they don't pay it
on the left of the political spectrum.
Oh, the far left.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the voice. They are the voice of the British Communist Party. Yeah.
And always have been.
Yeah, they're not just socialists. They are actually, in fact, they don't think much of the Labour Party at all. You know, they consider themselves the voice of the Communist Party and the trade union movement. You know, so yeah, 2015, and there was so much going on in the world, which was not to do with feminism. You know, things like the refugee crisis. I mean, I was actually in Berlin on holiday when Merkel opened the borders to the first million Syrian refugees. And so, and then at the same time, we were saying, oh, Jeremy Corbyn's been elected leader of the Labour Party. It was a really quite exciting time, actually, you know. And and at the same time, all this stuff started bubbling up about how the trans activism had been And I wasn't really aware of any of that because I was involved in sort of much more left-wing union-based stuff. And it's only now all this has happened to me now that I look back and think, yeah, well, that's because the unions are male-dominated and they are captured by the transactivist lobby. And yeah, you don't really hear about this sort of stuff.
No, you don't. And the Morning Star is not a conventional newspaper in terms of, you know, making money from sales and things like that, is it? Isn't it funded by the unions?
It's the voice of the trade union movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know whether you want to go on to what happened with this particular cartoon.
Yeah, I do, but I've got 1 or 2 questions on the way. I was wondering, is there a union for cartoonists? You know, like there's a magic circle for magicians. I wondered if there was one for cartoonists. Yeah, there
is. And I've only just joined it just before Christmas, and it's the Cartoonist Club of Great Britain.
Oh, so it's a club.
It's a club, and it's so all it is really is something you join. They have a dinner once a year and a website. It's pretty much it. Right. I haven't been chucked out yet. In fact, the Free Speech Union said if they try to check you out, come back to us and we'll stick up for you.
So are there many female cartoonists in there?
I haven't looked all the way through their members' database. They say that at any one time, there's never more than about 200 practicing cartoonists who are in the public sphere at any one time in Britain, because there are so few magazines, newspapers that will carry the cartoons. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
And so after what happened with me with the Morning Star, I've been quite lucky that I have got a new outlet, which is uncancelled.co.uk. I'd like to big them up because they are a nice little website.
Sounds good to me. Uncancelled.co.uk, easy to find.
Yeah. Somebody's just put in the chat about the NUJ. Yeah, the Cartoonist Club of Great Britain and the NUJ probably share some members because cartoonists work for newspapers and might be journalists as well, you see. And also they used to have the same criteria for joining. And the criteria for joining is the old NUJ criteria that it has to be your main or only occupation.
Right.
And that historically made it very difficult for women.
Oh, yes, and also someone like you,
to get into that field, because if you're having to earn your living, whereas a man who's got a wife at home doing everything for him has got the freedom to be an artist in a way that a woman hasn't, you know.
Yes, so it's a discriminatory criterion from the start.
It was. It's not so strict now. I mean, I just applied to join and they actually welcomed me with open arms, and I've actually got my alligator cartoon is actually on their website. So far nobody's noticed. So yeah, so that's
maybe
good.
They're a bit more open-minded. And somebody's just put in the chat that BECTU, which now is that electrical trades, BECTU? Which union is that? Do you know what BECTU is, Stella?
I'm not sure. How's it spelled?
BECTU. So it's something trade union. Entertainment and theatre, apparently.
Oh right, okay. I wouldn't really know.
They represent artists. I suppose cartoon is a subset of artists.
Okay. Broadcasting Union, someone said, yeah, I wouldn't know about that one. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So the Star obviously were very, very pleased with you because they really bigged you up, didn't they? In 2016.
They did. They put in writing. Yeah, they put in writing that I was their star cartoonist. Yeah. I visited the offices. They put some of my cartoons in frames on the wall and all that. You know, they were obviously invited me to their Christmas parties, and also it's quite a family atmosphere when you are part of an organisation like that, so the editor and new journalists I knew there were very sympathetic to my problems I was having in my life. They were very helpful. They're supportive, and so obviously what happened was a big shock when it happened. Yeah,
because the editor Ben Chaco described you as one of the paper's star cartoonists. He called one of your works sharp-edged satire, and in 2019 he even took the unusual step of featuring you in a Meet the Cartoonist interview.
I think I was the first one in that Meet the Cartoonist, yeah. And that's still on their website. They haven't took that down, and which I'm quite pleased about because I can still give links to it to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was
what happened?
Out of all the hundreds of cartoons I have done in the 5 years I was with them, I suddenly sent them a cartoon which was about the trans issue. And that was because it was in the news that particular week.
Yeah.
It was in the news because the Labour Party leadership campaign was on, and they were signing this pledge.
Yes.
The candidates were signing this pledge. I don't know if you remember, a lot of people might remember that. Caused a lot of ruckus. There were meetings with the candidates. They were being questioned on it. And
I don't think Starmer signed it, did he?
Starmer,
the only leadership candidate who didn't sign it?
Yeah, and look, he ended up as the leader, and the other ones didn't get. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, didn't get anywhere near. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Morning Star, obviously, we're covering that side of things.
Yeah.
And I did 2 cartoons that week. One was about the pledge that they were signing, and one was this cartoon of the alligator, the crocodile.
Yeah.
And I just sent my cartoons off to them, and I didn't know till afterwards whether they'd use them or not. So, and then I would just go on to the next idea, you know. Yeah. So do you want to know what happened next?
Somebody said in the chat, Labour was captured, and it was, wasn't it? It's, unfortunately still digging itself into a hole there. Yeah. So you didn't know until you know, you just found out afterwards which of your
a few days later
at random, really.
Yeah. I found out a few days later when somebody, because I was in the union, I was a union rep. So one of my fellow union reps came up to me. Which union is this? It's the Public and Commercial Services Union.
Okay.
Mark Sorotka, the one Mark Sorotka, husband of Ruth Sorotka, is in charge of. Yeah. Right. and they're in hangs a tale, because this is all linked to what happened to me. So one of my union reps came up to me and said, oh, some cartoon of yours has caused a big stink at the Morning Star. We didn't know nothing about it. Started looking online to see what was going on, and found out that they'd been pressurized they'd printed it, and then they'd been pressurized to apologize for it and drop me and cancel me and never use me again.
By who?
By the Trade Union Council, the TUC.
The TUC. Which is like the union of the unions, isn't it?
Yeah, I did not find out about all these details until about 4 months later, because I did not have a network of people. It's not like some of the women who've been cancelled in academia, for example.
Yeah.
I've got networks of people that they know.
Yeah.
In journalism, and I have nothing like that at all. You know, I had to cast around for where I could go for help. So I went to the Free Speech Union, which had only just started and had a bit of publicity.
What made you choose the Free Speech Union?
Because of the publicity that was around the launch of it.
Right.
I saw and I thought, well, that looks like, because they were offering support to people who were being cancelled.
Yeah.
And so they supported Selena Todd, for example,
yeah.
and a few other women as well. And so I went to them, and they were absolutely great. And they threatened the Morning Star with a defamation case.
Yeah.
And I made a couple of demands. I wanted a private apology.
Yeah.
And I wanted right of reply in the newspaper.
Yeah.
Which I thought was the least really that they could do, you know?
Yeah.
And so after, like I say, after about 4 months, we managed to maneuver a private chat with the editor, which I'm not going to give all the details of that private chat, but he did apologise. He told me lots that went on. He told me the Trade Union Council held a special meeting just about this cartoon, threatened to defund the newspaper. He offered his resignation. His staff was completely split on it. And it was just chaos, you know, chaos. And it wasn't just about me. They said that in future they could not print anything about women's rights unless they also printed stuff from transactivists to balance it up, right? And the Morning Star, well, they just capitulated pretty much straight away, because what choice did they have? Most of their funding comes from the trade unions. I have mentioned about this before on another podcast. I think it was with Megan Murphy I spoke about this.
Yeah.
There were only 2 unions that did not join in the pile-on, if you like.
Yeah.
And one was actually the communication workers unions, which I was very pleased about.
Yeah.
And the other one was the shop workers union, Astor.
Astor.
And both of those unions said, we couldn't care less about this. None of our members are complaining about this until they didn't join in with it. But most of the other
a lot of unions that did. I mean, there's hundreds of unions.
The big unions did, and that's where all the money comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this newspaper, this was the first time in 70 years of existence that they'd been threatened with defunding.
Wow.
Yeah. So I felt very sorry for them. I'm not angry with them at all. I actually, in fact, one of the journalists I knew even asked me for a signed copy of my book for his granddaughter at Christmas, and I was only too happy, you know. Yeah. So it's not like, but they're never allowed to use me again. That's it. I was cancelled without a word, and it was very, very upsetting at the time.
Yeah. Because
it
perfect job for you.
It wasn't a paid position, yeah, but it was a public platform.
Yeah, of course. And so, acknowledgement of the quality of your work.
Yeah, so a public cancellation and all the trashing of my reputation around the world on Twitter, you know, led by people like Owen Jones.
Owen Jones.
Yeah. You imagine how that feels when you don't have a network of supportive friends and colleagues and journalists to sort of support you.
Oh no, so I do know. I've been there.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. And so people have said, why the Free Speech Union? Because they're there, and because they're actually offering this service to people who've been cancelled. If you go on their website under the news tab and the blog, you can see all the letters they've written to universities to support people who've been cancelled. And there was a guy on the Isle of Wight radio, the DJ, who was he was dropped by his radio station. They managed to get him reinstated. So it's quite a lot of people, not just me, that they've supported.
And it's not a problem, their right-wing stance. I believe they're a very right-wing organisation.
But yet you look at the people who are on their board, which you can freely see.
Yeah.
There are journalists and academics from all over the world, and you know, I'm sure they're not all right-wing. And you know, a lot of the people they've supported, we're not right-wing. No, it's a service, and it's a blooming good service, you know.
Well, that's good for people to know about, because, you know, you won't be the last.
Oh, no, they're busy writing, they're busy supporting people, and they've got, they don't actually supply the lawyer for you, but they will write the preliminary letters for a potential court case, and they will point you in the direction of firms who might do it like pro bono. So they've got a good network, if you know what I mean. So, yeah.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, nobody can say they're not needed, not with what's been going on.
So many cases, aren't there? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's completely open to anybody who wants to start up a left-wing leaning version of the Free Speech Union.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's not like, come on, in fact, the more the merrier. We need the more support for people that we can get. You know, that really annoys me, Jan. That really annoys me, actually. And when people say that, and I have spoken about this on other channels, we have got to get away from this idea that we cannot cooperate on this major issue of the day, which is women's rights, that we cannot cooperate with people from other sides of the political spectrum. We've got to get away from that. I did not grow up in an atmosphere where it was like this. You know, when I was involved in politics in my 20s and 30s, for example, you'd go along and watch a session at the local council, you'd be campaigning on an issue, or you'd be out on a march or a little demonstration, but you could still have a drink with people in the pub afterwards, you know?
Yes, of course. And
you didn't want to kill one another.
Yeah.
You didn't want to kill one another and rubbish one another's reputations for the rest of their lives and try and lose their jobs for them. You know?
Yeah.
And this is, yes, it's about other issues as well. It comes up when people are accused of things like racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, but the women's rights issue is the one where it's the most blatant, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm only somebody's just put in the chat.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it?
Somebody's
thanks, Shireen, for pointing that out. The House of Lords debate last week showed what can be achieved when left and right work together. Absolutely, well said.
Yeah,
yes.
That's a brilliant point there. Where everybody, when people can actually see something is so bad that we have to fight it together. Yeah, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I've gone away a bit from what you wanted to ask me.
No, that's all right. I was wondering what you know, give it, while we're on the topic of this, what do you think about the government's recently announced plans to enforce free speech at universities?
I don't know if they're going to try and enforce it, but they're going to have something called a free speech champion, aren't they?
Yes.
Who's going to kind of oversee what universities are getting up to, aren't they? And isn't this more about students' unions? It's about students' unions, isn't it?
They've cancelled and formed a lot of people, haven't they?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, well, I think we've got a government who kind of gets it. that free speech is seriously under attack.
Yeah.
But the minute you kind of manage to achieve something on one front, it sort of pops up somewhere else, doesn't it? You know, and it's as if we're in the goalposts are forever moving, and we're continually having to fight on different fronts.
Well, yes, we should be fighting all the battles that we were fighting before the gender issue, you know, got kicked into the middle of the field and stopped us all doing all our other campaigns for equal pay and ending FGM and, you know, working on prostitution and all those other issues which haven't gone away and in fact have been flourishing while we're all having to take our eye off the ball and play with
they are, and it's very sad to see that even some of the major charities that work on those issues have also been captured by this
absolutely
cult.
Yeah. Women's Aid, yeah.
So being cancelled, it sort of propelled me into this world of radical feminism, which I didn't I called myself a feminist, when I was in my 20s. When I was in my 20s, the AIDS crisis was on, look, so women were uniting to support gay men. And campaign for them. And
where are they supporting us now? I wonder where they are.
Well, there are a few now. They've just sort of started creating, haven't they? The LGBT Alliance and this new Lesbian and Gay News, and hopefully more men will walk away and we'll try and support women. I've been in touch with a couple of people who are trying to do that, like Mr. Menno. Heard of Mr. Menno?
I have heard of Mr. Menno. Yeah, tell us about him. Yeah.
Well, he was at one of the Posy Parkers standing for women speakers corners.
Oh yeah.
And we met him there, and he's very funny, and he's got his YouTube channel, and he's done some good little parody songs, hasn't he, on the trans issue?
I haven't heard them, but
and he's trying to get gay men to walk away from Stonewall and Pride. And I mean, what would be absolutely amazing would be to have an alternative Pride, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
At a time of year separate from what the LGBT month is now, but for all those gay men and women, lesbians and allies who are not part of Stonewall and who would want to actually show their own strengths, on the streets, it would be absolutely amazing. So who knows? Maybe that something like that can be organised.
That would be good. That would be definitely.
It would be good. Yeah.
So how has this being cancelled affected you in the long term? Has it turned you into more of a radical feminist? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it had the effect of forcing me to retire early from work.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, what was going on with the unions, my own union, threatened me with dismissal and discipline. Like I said, Mark Sirocca is the boss of it, and he's married to Ruth Sirocca from Women's Place UK, who supported the Morning Star in cancelling me, you see. So the fact that they're married to one another, this is not a coincidence that I was also people tried to force me out of my own union. Nobody I knew, by the way. This was nothing to do with local people or my own union branch. This was to do with the national LGBT champion in that union.
Who is that?
I'm not going to say his name on here, but received this letter, which was just really. It was really a formality towards dismissal from the union. They didn't like it that although I'd been this artist for the Morning Star for 5 years without bothering anybody, this one cartoon all of a sudden was something that the union didn't like. Do you see what I mean? I'd been a good little feminist, if you like, for the 5 years, doing little cartoons about union issues and all the things they liked. But the minute I did something which was rocking the boat, as it were, you see, so that was it. And they still haven't been allowed to print my right to reply, but it has been printed elsewhere. It's been on Uncommon Ground Media, and it's been on Women's Liberation Radio News website.
Yeah.
So other people have printed my right to reply.
Lots of people called TERFs end up on Uncommon Ground. Very good place to be. Yeah, we've got a few things on there.
Yeah, and he's had a couple of problems with his website, you know, which he not sure whether it's because he was attacked a little while ago last year over copyright issues, which is something that they use. And
they'll use anything. But this is Dan Fisher, isn't it, who runs Uncommon Ground.
He had problems there where he had to take the website down, and only in the last week or so he's had problems with the website coming down. He wasn't sure what had caused it. So, you know, any website that is women friendly at the moment it is a target, you know.
Yeah. It's a very, very big, you know, we thought the backlash was bad, you know. Where was it? Susan Faludi wrote her book back in the 80s, didn't she? The backlash against women's rights. And looking at it, that was nothing, was it, compared to what we're witnessing now?
That's right. I mean, Meghan Murphy has called this the most successful backlash against feminism in modern times.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
It is. I mean, maybe it will burn itself out. You know, maybe it's going to be a short-lived thing. But the way it's sort of gone around the world and captured so many governments and institutions and the media, it's difficult to see. I mean, we could be in for a long haul with it, couldn't we?
I think we definitely are. Can we just go back a step? Because somebody said in the chat, and I can relate to that, somebody said, can you explain again about the union boss who's married to the Women's Place person? And we're talking about Women's Place UK, which is run by Ruth Soroka. Ruth is married to her husband, Mark Soroka, who is in charge of which union is it?
PCSU, Public and Commercial Services Union, the Civil Service Union.
And that was the union that you were active in.
Yeah.
Not only did they via the TUC insist that your cartoon came down from the Morning Star, but they also insisted that you would never work there again.
That's right. I mean, every union has got an LGBT champion, and the one in my own union came after me pretty much instantly as soon as it had happened, within a couple of days of being cancelled from the Star.
And you can't tell us this person's name.
It's probably easy enough to find out. I don't want to sit on here. But that's what happened. I still have the letter, and obviously that letter was used by the Free Speech Union to put pressure on the Morning Star. So, yeah, I mean, it's not. I'm not making it up. This isn't.
No one's suggesting that you're making it up.
Theory.
It's confusing when you think of, you know, Women's Place UK being a, you know, I know they're pro-trans rights. Everyone's pro-trans rights. You know, trans people should have the same rights as everybody else. But the fact that she runs Women's Place UK and he runs the union is just.
But this is how incestuous the left is in Britain. Britain is a small island.
Yeah.
There's a limited pool of people who are willing to be activists.
Yeah.
There's a small pool of people, I'm trying to say, who are willing to be activists, you know, and that happened. And talking about Women's Place UK, I have talked about this before. I have attempted to reach out to them. I've contacted them through their website. I've contacted one or two people who are involved in them.
Yeah.
And they've been friendly enough as individuals, but I have not had any kind of apology from Women's Place UK over basically throwing me under a bus at the time and saying how much they supported them apologising for printing the cartoon. And I can see the cat.
I told you he'd be back. Yeah.
He's pixelated.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he is actually real. I can see him in the background. Here he is from here. Sit on your cushion. Sit on your cushion, darling. There you are. You have to sit there and keep an eye on me.
Yeah,
it's very hard to reconcile, isn't it?
That goes to show how close together these organisations are.
Yes.
They're actually married to one another. You can't get close together than that.
Well, someone's just said in the chat, Women's Place UK too busy platforming Hayton and Harrison Esquire to concern themselves with the silencing of actual women. I must admit, we take a bit of a line here. We take a line. We don't really do true trans. You know, there are those people who there are true trans, and there's a magic formula. You rub the philosopher's stone 3 times and, you know, drop it in the sand, and that will tell you who the true trans people are. We don't really believe in true trans here. So
I'm not saying for 1 second that Women's Place UK haven't done good work. I'm not saying that.
Neither am I. Of course, I was at their conference, yeah.
But certainly in my case, there was an extreme lack of sisterhood at the time this happened.
Yeah.
You know, and the sisterhood that I have found has been elsewhere. It's been in the rad femme world. It hasn't been
that's good
with a group like them that you might think is a traditional support group for women.
Yeah. It's a bit much. I think everyone's getting their head around that. And the unions, of course, that's inexcusable, isn't it? Has anyone, somebody else asked in the chat, has anyone actually articulated exactly what the objection to that Endgame cartoon was?
It was purely because trans activists put pressure on the unions, and they put pressure on the paper. It was purely that. It wasn't.
It was just the old transphobic label.
Yeah, I did have a few readers of the Morning Star contact me and say, "Oh, here's a letter I've sent because I was so outraged."
Yeah,
that was women that did that.
Yeah.
But that was it. There wasn't any concerted campaign to get me back, as it were, because the unions have threatened them with defunding.
That's the people that we would expect to support you are the unions, aren't they? The people that you'd expect to support you are the unions.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're actually a union rep.
Well, again, I want to say about my own colleagues that they immediately offered to represent me.
Yeah.
And I said, "What? You're happy to represent me against our own union?" And they said, "Yes." But I wasn't prepared to drag them into the mud, because you see, if they were on Twitter or social media, they would have had their reputations trashed as well.
Yeah.
And their family people. I didn't want to start dragging my work colleagues through it. So because I had the possibility of retiring early, it more or less bounced me into doing that. So I've left work now, so I'm semi-retired now. All I'm doing is working as an artist.
I'm just so you've stopped doing. I'm a bit confused. When you stopped doing the painting and decorating?
No, I was a civil servant.
Oh, you were a civil servant. Okay, because we didn't get to that. Okay, what were you doing in the civil service?
I've been a civil servant for the last 10 years.
Right.
And for 20 years before that, I was in the construction. I'm a lot older than I look.
So what were you doing in the civil service?
I'm just at the bottom of the pyramid, just basic admin work.
Okay, admin, yeah. Okay, because that was, I was thinking, what had you retired from? And Brigitta's just put in the Q&A that the Women's Place UK broke the trans stranglehold by working with trans speakers. Yeah, we don't do that. Yeah.
Well, there's enough organisations doing that, aren't there?
Yeah,
you know, why should you?
Did it the first year, didn't they? One conference. I think they stopped doing it after that because they had so much protest.
Yes, I mean this new website, Lesbian and Gay News, which is very, very slick and very professional looking, by the way, and has got some of our favourite people on it, like Joe Bartosh.
Oh yes, we like Joe Bart, yes.
But people are criticising that because one of the first people they've put on there is this Debbie Hayton, who's got a terrible reputation and has just this court case that is just, you know, with Hayton, and people are saying, well, why are they using him?
Hayton or Hayden?
Debbie
Hayton, yeah, okay.
Hayton. So
Debbie Hayton and Stephanie Hayden, and it's
right, okay. So Debbie Hayton is another. Debbie Hayton is another trans.
Yeah, Debbie Hayton is a trans person who I think worked as a teacher, doesn't she?
Yeah. So people don't like the fact that they're on there, but they probably feel that with the way websites are attacked these days, that they have to have at least one on there just to show. Oh yeah, so they can point at that one and say, oh well, you know, we've got that one on there, so please don't attack us. That's probably something to do with that, you know.
I'm just laughing because someone's put in the chat, Debbie is the teacher whose wife always looks destroyed. Yeah, trans widow. We've had them on. We know how destroyed they are. They really, really are.
Right. Yeah. I've talked to you before this webinar, Jan, about how the way all this gaslighting is done by the trans cult.
Well, we've talked about the parallel between somebody being in an abusive family, as you were when you grew up, and the fact that, you know, many people have that experience, but that is mirrored in the macro level by the whole trans cult, gaslighting the whole of society.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been through 2 or 3 abusive relationships, including a violent one, and you see the same pattern just scaled up.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yeah.
In the way women just kind of not turn a blind eye for it, but for their own safety, don't speak out and don't reach out to their friends, you know. And the funny thing is that if you do talk to your friends about it, the chances are that they will agree with you. I mean, if you've had friends for years and years and years, I've got a small group of friends who I've known for a long, long time. They didn't bat an eye about any of this. They were on my side, you know. So it's.
I think a lot of people find some of their friends are on their side, but I've also had long friendships which have become more distant over this.
Yeah, that's a terrible shame.
People are in nice high-paid jobs and they want to retire and not rock the boat. People with £1 million pension funds to look after, and they don't want to be associated with a known turf. And I found it, you know, slightly disillusioning, shall we say. I think other people have had that experience too.
That's the times we are living in. I mean, yes. As well as becoming a Radfem campaigner, I hope I'm going to do more of that this year when we get out of lockdown. But I also think of myself as a free speech advocate as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
That isn't always going to put me on the same side as some feminists, because it might mean I'm speaking out for free speech on an issue that other people don't like.
Well, let's move on to your recent cartoon then, which I saw the other day about the Scottish issue. And, you know, I don't know if there are people here that know a lot about Scottish politics. I don't. But your cartoon showed the Scottish thistle, you know, the national plant of Scotland, drooping badly. And across the top, you've got identity politics written.
Yeah, it's in a
would you like to unpack that for us a bit?
It's in a beaker of sort of poison, just bubbling green poison. Yeah. And it just says identity politics coming out the top. And I did that especially on Friday. Because of that big hearing that was going on in the Scottish Parliament with Alex Salmond. Yeah, because I work every week for uncancelled.co.uk, I keep an eye on all, as much as I can that's going on. Yeah, I'm just thinking to explain the cartoon for those people that, you know, I'm not that clued up on it myself, you know, for those of us that don't know. Yeah, it was just a very simple cartoon of the Scottish thistle dying because it's in this pot of poison, basically. And, you know, that's what a lot of the people who have supported the SNP think, that they were hoping to get independence by now, and it's just been obstructed and obstructed and obstructed. And the SNP seem more keen on promoting men to women's roles within their party and putting men in dresses forward as women candidates. Yes, and bring back Joanna Cherry. This seems to be what they're doing, yeah. So that cartoon was pretty simple, a pretty simple representation of what's going on up there. The Scottish campaign for Scottish independence is actually destroying the hopes of Scottish independence. Yeah, and the thing is, they've shot themselves in the foot over this, because the right wing and the unionists can completely take that and say, well, you see, they can't even organise themselves, they can't even run themselves. How could they ever run it if it was an independent country? And they are it's just completely shot themselves in the foot over it. Yes, yeah. You know, if all they do is still turning out the cartoons. And I think, am I right in thinking that you're happy for radical feminist campaigns to use your work? Yeah, when people go on my website, they'll see a page called Feminist Fight Back, and that's got a lot of the gender critical cartoons I've been doing over the last year, and people can just grab them and use them anywhere. Yeah, I think we'll get a few up on the website. Send them to your friends, turn them into greetings cards, anything you like. Yeah. I don't particularly. Oh, if you're gonna do anything commercial with them, I would be grateful if you told me. But if it's clearly in campaigning, yeah, just use them, just credit me. But acknowledge, we would always acknowledge, and I'm sure everybody else will too. You know, acknowledge the source. That's good. So how is life now then? You've retired, you've left the Morning Star. What are you doing with yourself? I'm working regularly for people who enjoy using my cartoons in campaigning. Yep. I've written my book. That took several months last year. 2020, the year we were all cancelled. Yes, we were cancelled in 2017, I think, but yeah. And anybody can order my book from any of the major online bookstores. If you don't want to go to Amazon, go to things like Waterstones and Blackwell's. It's on there as well. That's good to know. Barnes and Noble. Don't want to go to Amazon. Yeah. Someone's asking on the chat if you're on Instagram, Stella. I don't think you do much social media. The only social media I'm on is Spinster. I'm not on anything else. I never have been on anything else. that's one of the reasons why when all this happened to me and my reputation was destroyed, it didn't come directly to me because I'm not on Twitter. But my friends who are on Twitter were seeing it, and it upset a lot of people, a lot of people I know, who and put them off being on Twitter, you know. But the funny thing is, Jan, that once it's happened to you, it's happened. It's like, what else can happen?
Yes, yeah, move on.
What else can happen?
Well, it frees up space in your life, doesn't it? You think, okay, what am I going to use that for? What will I do next? It's always something new to do. And
it's a bit like, another thing I had hanging over me was the fact that I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And it was 15 years ago I escaped from that. Yeah. But I still looked over my shoulder all the time. Yeah. And if I did anything in public life at all, I tended to do it anonymously or just supporting other people. Yeah. Because I was afraid of this guy and his friends coming after me, you know. Of course. Even though was it one woman every 3 days in the UK dies? Yeah, you know. And so when this happened with the Morning Star, I was very leery about should I talk publicly about it at all, because this could get in the papers. This is how they get you. People say, oh well, you'll only make it worse for yourself if you go public, and that is how people's stories get concealed. I mean, we've talked to a number of people. We put a list up in Object back in, I think, 2018. There was Natalie Bird that was kicked out of the Lib Dems, someone that was giving a hard time in the home education movement, all sorts of things. And you know, we had it with Humanists UK. And the question is, you know, do I try and keep a low profile and hope that there'll be some shred of that, or, you know, involvement in that organisation or that work left for me after it's all died down? Or do I take a stand and say, I'm not having it? And, you know, many people, especially people that have got children to support, you know, they can't, can't necessarily speak out. I don't have children, but I am married to a guy who's a vulnerable person. I'm his carer. Yeah. So from that point of view, I was worried about loads more hate coming in my direction. Yes, and loads more public abuse. Caring for somebody else, aren't they? Yeah. And as it turned out, I started going on podcasts and things and talking about it. And I was in the Mail on Sunday in the middle of last year, did a big feature on free speech, and I was in that, and that was really nice, actually. They did a good job on it, actually. And nothing happened. And I thought, well, what's happened? And it was only just before Christmas, I had the courage to try and Google my previous abuser and found that he had actually died. Oh. He had died before I was cancelled at the Morning Star. I didn't know that. I was worried all during last year, would he or his mates, because people like that surround themselves with a little gang of other abusive men, you know. Folks. And and that didn't happen. So I wondered what was going on, and it turned out he'd actually died. So I now feel that I can actually speak about that as well. Good. But yeah, that was 15 years and I didn't have any counselling or anything at the time. I think very often that when you do speak out, it's not as bad as you think. And I left the Humanists in the end. I thought that you're not the people I thought you were. I want nothing to do with you. But I made them, you know, I went through their complaints procedure and made them say that I'd done nothing wrong, because I hadn't. And I think it's, for your own mental health, it's better to speak out if you possibly can. But we do recognise that there are some people who can't do that. You know, it's wrong to say that that's what everyone should do, because not everyone is in a position to be able to do that. Yeah, there were many reasons why I couldn't have stayed on at work and fought the case and tried to, because it would have dragged so many of my colleagues, my work colleagues, my union colleagues, into it. This is in the civil service. Damaged them, yeah, and it would have damaged them and had a knock-on effect on their families. And I just couldn't do it. I just could not do that. So, Michael, were you actually sacked from your job, your paid job? I took early retirement. You took early retirement. Were things being made difficult for you there? Well, it's obviously affected my pension. And no, it was never made difficult. Everybody knew that I was an artist as a hobby in my spare time. Had nothing to do with my job. But as I say, it was this one cartoon caused all the fuss. Yeah. And of course, since then, I've done more cartoons which I've put on Spinster and places which are gender critical. Yeah. And because now I think, well, they can come after me as much as they like. Now they've done it once. Yeah. You know, I'm
what else can they do to you? Yeah.
I'm obviously an out turf now, aren't I? So
Join the club. It's a great club.
Yeah,
You meet some good people here.
that's right. But it's not just in the radical feminist world. In my book, I've got a section called the Cancelled Cartoonist Club. And I talk about political cartoonists. This has happened to in other countries, far, far worse than what happens here.
Yes, but I think people expect us to have higher standards, don't they? You know, Britain, home of free speech, supposedly.
Also, we don't have secret police. We don't have, you're not going to, you know, other cartoonists in other countries have been arrested, put in jail, murdered, obviously.
I know.
You know, far, far worse than what happens here. And I've got a little section in my book about that. And we need to keep an eye on what goes on in other countries, because I always use as an example Posey Parker and her friends going up to Leeds for that speaker's corner they tried to have.
Yes.
I think
when the police came.
Just before the third lockdown.
Yeah, I remember. I've seen the footage.
And I was going to go to that. I'd been to the previous two. I decided not to go to Leeds, so I didn't get arrested. But they got arrested.
I know.
God's sake.
I know.
And they used the COVID rules, which was ridiculous.
Yeah. Because you could see in the footage that those women were socially distanced.
Yeah.
They were operating safely, protesting safely.
And Leeds...
And they withdrew, they issued them with notices, didn't they? But they were withdrawn.
Well, Leeds has got a bad reputation because it's got that. And the reason they were there was
the sex trade, isn't it?
Yeah. The reason they were there was a protest about that
about the
area.
Managed zone, so-called managed zone. They used to call it the safe zone until a woman in prostitution was killed there in the first week of it being a safe zone. And then they thought, maybe it's not so safe after all, we'll call it the managed zone. And it's a total scandal. But at least it hasn't spread elsewhere, because the plan was that the whole of the UK would take this line. Unfortunately, no one's followed it, but it's still bad enough to have that horrendous, you know.
Well, everybody watching this, I'd recommend to watch another one of your Object webinars with Belle Staffy on, because she explains in great detail what's going on there.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, it is amazing. It's amazing how many so-called feminists, someone's just mentioned in the chat, how many feminist organisations have been captured. You know, people that you would really think would know better. Apparently Pink Stinks has been trans captured.
But what I was just saying about Posey being arrested and up there.
Yes.
We are at the top of a slope where we could actually slide down and get as bad as some other countries if we're not careful with this, with free speech. And so we all need to be completely on our guard about it all the time.
Absolutely. And those of us who can speak out need to speak out.
Yeah. If that will sometimes put me at odds with some things that other feminists are saying, well, it might do.
Well, we don't all have to agree on everything, do we? You know, we can agree that free speech is important, and we can agree what we think about the gender industry.
Yes.
I personally, I don't hate anybody, and if people have done those things to their body, it's a bit like, I've got friends who are alcoholics, and, you know, I drink alcohol, but I don't approve of people being alcoholics. But hey, they're my friends. It's not my job to tell them how to live their lives, you know. Yeah. And I don't pretend to tell anyone how to live their life. But the idea that these, you know, changing your body and with drugs and surgery is something that should be pushed at distressed young people. That's the thing I have a problem again. And that's not a person at all. That's an idea and a system.
Well, certainly when gay liberation was being fought for 60s, 70s, 80s, and the AIDS scandal, the AIDS crisis, that nobody was trying to coercively force children to be gay, were they?
No, of course not.
It was like, come on. In fact, they had the opposite problem.
Yeah.
and transphobia, this trans cult, a lot of it, homophobia is at the root of a lot of that as well.
Of course it is. That's right. I think we're there, aren't we? Is there anything I've missed out, Stella? Anything I've forgotten to say?
No, I just want to say thank you for everybody watching today. I'm trying to use my art to help support other campaigns. So anybody who wants to just get in touch with me. The most recent one I've been supporting is Keep Prisons Single Sex.
Oh yes, we support them.
And if you go on their website, you'll see some of my cartoons are on their hoodies and t-shirts.
Yeah. So
you can buy them and support that very worthy cause.
Yes, and I hope people will do. So thank you very much, Stella. Very interesting talking to you. Just as we close, can I just say the feminist action of the day, you can support Keep Prison Single Sex. We've asked them to come on, but they unfortunately have their kids on the times we're doing our webinars. The other really important cause right now is the Fair Play for Women crowdfunder to challenge the census, collecting data on gender. Because the census people have sent it out early to try and avoid their court case, they need some more money urgently. So please, we put the link up at the beginning of the chat. Please do go on there and send them what you can afford if you possibly can. In a fortnight's time, we've got another wonderful feminist to be interviewed, Vaishnavi Kundar. Some of you might have seen her at the Philia conference last time we had one, and she's just put out a brilliant film called Dysphoria, about the gender issue. So please go on YouTube and try and view it before next time. And we'll be discussing it in a fortnight's time with Vaishnavi herself. Thank you all very much for coming to hear our webinar. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye, everybody. Oh yeah, dysphoric, sorry, yes. The film's called Dysphoric, apologies.
Did we do well, my darling girls? Did we really do well? We grew you up to be straight and strong, to do your best and